오제 샹기 곰팡유토쇼. So let's do the 4 limitless contemplations. May all beings have happiness and create the causes of happiness. May they all be free from suffering and creating the causes of suffering. May they find that noble happiness which can never be tainted by suffering. May they attain universal impartial compassion, free of worldly bias towards friends and enemies. Sem jendam je dewatang dewe jutang den pa jutik dungal tang dungal chichu tang drawa jutik dungal mepe dewa tampat tang min drawa jutik nering jak tang ni tang drawe tang nom chempo la ne pa jutik. So good morning to everybody. It's lovely to see you. If you could turn on your cameras, it would be appreciated a lot. It's much better than
Sorry, Mel, I'm having problems connecting today.
Okay. I know you all do.
On.
Don't worry, it's fine. If you can't, you can't. And if you can, it's lovely. So today we're going to do part 2, and I've called it The Inevitability of Death Must Motivate Thorough Learning About It. And this part, now, whenever I teach, I always like to create a full atmosphere about the subject. It's really important to me. And I love these Tibetan teachings, Buddhist teachings on death. And I wish everybody would learn them. I think we'd have a much better planet if we did learn them, not only for death, but for life as well. And I did create this atmosphere last time, but it was 2 weeks ago. So we must recreate it and then dive into the teachings. But I want to say something very important. You can comment with pleasure. The teachings of death and dying are very technical. Okay, they're very technical. I mean, if you read them from, say, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, I mean, as a Westerner, you'll probably put it down and say, okay, that's very interesting, but not for me. It's really, you know, they're very technical, but I don't like to give them technically. I like to give them as a proper hard teaching. And it's important. This part is very important. And I'll tell you why. Because what Zongsa puts all the time is he says that each person, when they come to the door of death, and that can be tomorrow, today, anytime, will experience their experience differently to other people. So it's really important. I like to call it, rather than projection, I'll tell you why I don't like using the projection. It is a mental projection. But in psychology, you know, they put there for the word to explain projection, they always say, oh, you've just projected your anger onto me, which is true. But I don't want people to think that when their mind projects something out, so whatever's inside your mind, you see outside when you come to death. And I prefer to look at it as a manifestation than a projection, just because the psychological word projection, but it's okay to look at it as a projection. But everything you see is from your own mind point of view that you see. So you're not going to see it differently. If you're a Christian ego, you're definitely going to see Jesus. And anyway, Jesus is such a Buddha, and I've gone so into detail about what happened to him at death when they called it the ascension in Christianity. And I've decided he absolutely attained the rainbow body, the same as our teaching. And I think he's a Buddha anyway. So I have no problem if you use him as your forward transmission, as everything else, or whatever other thing you like. It doesn't really matter. It comes from your mind. So it's really important in these teachings to understand this fully, so that they are hard teachings, because we are very unlikely to have some master lama friend, maybe if you're lucky, and and Eckhart's around, he might read you from the Tibetan book when you're dying. Let's hope so, Eckhart. But by and large, we're not going to have anybody to actually read to us and remind us what's going on when we die. So therefore, you have to know these teachings like the back of your hand. You haven't got time, especially if you have a sudden death. You really haven't got time to think, oh, yeah, what was this other thing I'm supposed to see now? Oh, yes, you've got to know it so that when you come to the gate of death, you are really, really, really prepared. And that's what I really want to do. So I'm starting off as usual with a couple of stories. One is a very interesting one. I was watching this YouTube with Zongsa and Jet Li. Now, Jet Li was a Buddhist and he was a famous Chinese kung fu master who starred in many Chinese movies, and he became very, very famous in China. So the two of them were having this dialogue on the YouTube. You can look it up if you want to. So Jet Li was a Buddhist, and so in this asking, someone said, "Why did you become a Buddhist in addition to a martial arts master and tremendous fan?" He said, "I thought about the Buddha, I wrote it down, who was born with everything, good looks, fame, as he was a prince who would be king of the whole land, wealth, food, pomp, every circumstance and condition anyone would wish for. Yet he chose to give that all up to find the truth. I came from poverty," he said, "worked many hours a day on my martial arts from a young age to try and get somewhere for my sake and my family. And I succeeded. Then film contracts, fame, money. But I kept thinking, but the Buddha gave it all up in his quest." I kept thinking, so I began with the same quest, and I added to that, Emaho. Okay, because he didn't go into that famous thing. He didn't give up what he achieved. He just saw to it that he was not attached and kept going beyond those conditions. Now, as fate would have it, he was one of the people that were caught in that tsunami in Asia at that particular time, a couple of years ago. So this is what he said. It was very interesting. "I was in the tsunami in Thailand with my two daughters and a carer for the younger one. He was asked about how he survived. He had taken them to the beach, and when this third wave came up, he said it was up to his head, and he saw the carer and his little daughter being swept out to sea." You can imagine, I mean, it's one thing to find people afterwards, but to see them being swept out to sea. And he says, "I had a clear thought at that moment," and I found this so fascinating. He says, "I thought so clearly as I was watching them be washed away. At death, we are all equal. Whether we'd had fame, poverty, good or bad life, we face death as equals. The circumstances at that moment don't matter. Death equalizes us." That's all I want to take from that thing. But I found it absolutely fascinating, because all of us, if we were in that situation, would definitely not have a clear thought that death equalizes us. We would have a clear thought, there goes my child, and there's nothing I can do. I'm drowning in the water. I can't even possibly get her. Anyway, she was saved. You know, both of them were saved, and they were washed up onto the beach. So that made him even more devoted and dedicated, and I'm sure he did a lot of prayers then. But I found that such an interesting thing, that we're all equal at the portal of death. Even the evil people are equal, but then what they're going to see is going to come from the projection or the manifestation of their own mind. And the second story I want to do, I want to do 3 stories, and then I'll go bursting into the teaching. Again, a Rachel Raymond story. I love her stories, and I might have told you this one, but I found it very, very relevant for this thing. She was 14 at the time that this happened, and she said she went to go and get a job with old age patients in an old aged home. She said, "I did not want to see this patient. Her great age frightened me, and the words senile dementia suggested that not only was she older by far than anyone I've ever met, she was crazy too. That's what she thought. And she said, filled with foreboding, I knocked on the closed door of her room. There was no answer. Opening the door, I found myself in a small room lit by a single window which faced the morning sun. 2 chairs had been placed in front of the window. In one sat a very old lady looking out. The other was empty. I stood just inside the door for a time. She was 14 at the time, but did not acknowledge my presence in any way. But uncertain of what to do next, I went to the empty chair and sat down, the basket of beads on my lap. She didn't even seem to notice that I'd come. For a while, I tried to find some way to make open conversation. I was painfully shy at this time, which one of the reasons my parents had suggested I take this job. And I would have had a hard time even in less difficult circumstances. The silence in the room was absolute. Somehow it almost seemed rude to speak, yet I desperately wanted to succeed in my task. I considered and discarded all the ways of making conversation suggested in the training, and none of them seemed possible. The old woman continued to look toward the window, her face half hidden from me, barely breathing. Now, remember, she hadn't spoken or anything with her dementia. Finally, I simply gave up and sat with the basket of glass beads on my lap for the full hour, and it was quite peaceful. The silence was broken at last by the little bell, which signified the end of the morning activity. Taking hold of the basket, I prepared to leave, but I was only 14, and curiosity overcame me. Turning to the old woman, I asked, "What are you looking at?" I immediately flushed. Prying into the lives of the residents was strictly forbidden. Perhaps she'd not heard, but she had. Slowly she turned toward me, and I could see her face for the first time. It was radiant. In a voice filled with joy, she said, "Why, child? I am looking at the light." I loved it. Many years later, says Rachel, as a pediatrician, I would watch newborns look at the light with the same rapt attention, almost as if they were listening for something. Fortunately, I had not been able to find a way to interrupt. A 96-year-old woman may stop speaking because arteriosclerosis has damaged her brain, or she's become psychotic and she's no longer able to speak. But she may also have withdrawn into a space between the worlds to contemplate what is next, to spread her sails and patiently wait to catch the light. I had found her by accident or perhaps by grace. I've often wondered what would have happened had I been the highly trained technical physician I would shortly become. At that time, I would not have known how to find her and sit with her, how to learn from her about silence and trusting life. Now, many years later, I hope that I do. So that's a beautiful story. And I think it gives us a great lesson, because I think that if you just think of the words, why I'm looking at the light, why I'm contemplating the light, I think that if you really want to prepare for death, you need to contemplate the light. You need to see, because later it's so interesting that Anam Tupten, in his book on the Bardos, says we belong to primordial purity. I love that. We belong to primordial purity. Primordial purity is our mother light. We belong to it. And yet we're so busy, active in our lives, we don't even know that we belong to it, and we don't even know how to contemplate it. And here's this woman in her state really knowing how to contemplate it. So I think it's really important that we understand that, because we're going to talk. I don't care how many sessions I want you to butt in, but I want you to take these teachings to your heart. By the time I'm finished with 3 or 4, whatever sessions, I want you to be able to say to me, wow, this is what I've absorbed. This is what I see. This is what I want to be able to do. When you can do that, you're ready for this thing called death. And my last story, and then I won't tell any more stories, is where I remember a middle-aged woman who came to see Dajjal Rinpoche in New York in 1976. She had no particular interest in Buddhism, but had heard there was a great master in town. She was extremely sick, and in her desperation, she was willing to try anything, even see a Tibetan master, and he was the translator at that time. She came into the room, sat in front of Dajjal Rinpoche. She was so moved by her own condition and his presence that she broke out down into tears. She blurted out, "My doctor has given me only a few months to live. Can you help me? I'm dying." To her surprise, in a gentle yet compassionate way, Dajjal Rinpoche began to chuckle. Then he said quietly, "You see, we are all dying. It's only a matter of time. Some of us just die sooner than others." With these few words, he helped her to see the universality of death and that her impending death was not unique. This eased her anxiety. Then he talked about dying, the acceptance of death, and he spoke about the hope there is in death. At the end, he gave her a healing practice, which she followed enthusiastically. Not only did she come to accept death, but by following the practice with complete dedication, she was healed. And there are many, many other cases of people, I know a lot, who were diagnosed as terminally ill, given only a few months to live. And when they went into solitude, followed a spiritual practice, and truly faced themselves in the fact of death, they were healed. What is this telling us? That when we accept death and we transform our attitude towards life, not towards death, towards life, when we transform our attitude toward life and discover the fundamental connection between life and death, okay, when we discover that, a dramatic possibility for healing can occur, because the illness is given to you. It's the last feature of what your mind has created. There are lots of features before that, and that's the last thing when you actually have a cancer or something else, the last thing when it manifests in your body. So if we believe that illnesses like cancer can be a warning to remind us we have been neglecting deep aspects of our being, such as our spiritual needs, and if we take this warning seriously and change fundamentally the direction of our lives, there's very little real hope for healing, not only our bodies, but there's a very real hope for healing, not only our bodies, but our whole being. Now, those three stories that I've told you this morning are very, very important. Hey, girls, switch on your things if you possibly can. I like to see your faces so you can debate with me. But what I want to say, if you can, is I'm giving you these three stories so you can really, really, really change your attitude towards death and dying, and change your attitude to what Tibetan Buddhism is actually asking of you with the whole death. Dzongsa Khyentse says, the sole aim of all the Buddha's teachings is to realize that each and every samsaric phenomena is an illusion. What happens when you think that everything in your life is an illusion? It's such a strange thing when you see people clutching onto everything, that it's all an illusion. We realize that when we lose somebody close to us, we realize that nothing lasts forever. We realize it's all an illusion. But does it have to take that to realize? And he says there are three things you have to do. You start by listening to as much info as you can about the illusions, okay, that are life and death, a subject none of us can hear enough of. I mean, when you take Guru Rinpoche as an example, there's no more life and death. That's why he says, I've gone beyond that. Where I go to after I've done whatever work is completely different to ordinary sentient beings, because you think that's your life, that's everything. Now you die, Now you go into another life and you have an illusionary identity. And it's not. It's only about what you can put in and what you can take out of this samsaric life, nothing more. And when we realize that, it's so amazing. He says, start by listening. Next, contemplate what you've heard and learn more by reading, studying, and really seeing the Dharma, which is really important. And I think this is so important because I'm so grateful that I've got to teach you, because teaching you on an ongoing basis makes me extend my contemplation. And, you know, what I realized this morning, I've told you, I've got 4 people going through the most terrible things right now. And all 4 are in touch with me like most of the day when I've got time. You know, they're in touch with me all the time. And this morning, as I was doing my practice, I thought, my eyes are watering. I had all these messages and I thought, my eyes are watering. Why are they watering like this? I think I'm crying for them. And I'm crying for the things that have happened to them. I'm really crying. I'm crying for the people that want to commit suicide so badly because they're living under a delusion that if you take your own life, you're going to come out on the other side with angels and harps. But the thing that goes with you is your mind. So if your mind is in trauma while you are so depressed here, your mind is going to be double trauma when you take your life, because now you haven't even got a physical body to hide in. So these illusions, I thought, I'm actually crying for what's happening this day to a few people. I really am crying for them. And that's why my eyes are watering the whole morning. That's what I thought this morning. So you contemplate what you've heard and study. And he says, finally, and most importantly, try to get used to what you have heard. Try to realize what you have heard so that you put it into your own life. You see, the technical things of death and dying, the dissolving of the elements, which I've now read a whole lot of things that make it look very different to what I knew before. Each time you should know it deeper and deeper, not just know the technical side. But it's really, really important that we get used to and realize what we have heard. And he asks the question, how? He says, getting used to the idea that life is like a dream. That's all it is. Life is like a dream. Just ask a few questions. No need for answers. I ask that question when I'm thinking about my children, like the one little one had the birthday in London yesterday. The other one, you know, got a certificate for his football playing and everything. And I looked at this. All I can see is a little video, you know, a little video on my phone. And what I'm grateful about is, because I miss them like anything, but what I'm grateful about is that it makes me know they don't belong to me. This is all a dream. I will only see 1 or 2 little events of their life, but I'm not living with them. I'll never have them in my life. So they don't even belong to me. In name, they're my grandchildren. But in actual fact, what are they? They lead their lives, and if I die off, they're not going to mourn too much. They might get a bit upset or whatever the case is, but that's who we are. And we realize this, we ask those questions. And he says, don't get too attached to your plans, hopes, or expectations. And at very least, he says, prepare yourself for the possibility that nothing will work out. And I put in brackets, the way you planned it. Okay, the way you planned it. Nothing will work out. Tell yourself this every day. Nothing's going to work out the way. People say to me, what are you going to do when you sell your house? I go, I don't know. I've got a couple of ideas in my head, but I know how Guru Rinpoche works. My connection with Guru Rinpoche Mandala is so deep that suddenly something else appears on my plate. And I'm so grateful for that, because that's where I've got to go next. So I might have a whole plan about what we're going to do when we sell our house, and the universe may have a different plan for me. So don't hold on to your plans. Wherever they land up, they land up. And he says, do reality checks. He says, look at this friend of mine. This friend of mine was so close to me, we were inseparable. And then he insulted me or stole from me or did something, and now he's an enemy. You know, how many people in our lives were what we put everything into, and then they turned out differently, okay? He says, your wealth changes. People emigrate, and you were so close to them, and now you can never be close to them, no matter how you try. We're lucky we've got communication. He says the best thing anyone can do for a dying person is not to lie to them about what is happening. Like, you know, people go, I'm so ill and everything. Do you think I'm dying? And lots of people will go, no, 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 you're going to make it. Just give yourself strength. You tell them the truth. Yes, you are dying, but dying is a transition, which we need to transcend. When you understand these things about death and dying, you have a different attitude. When you have a different attitude, then the technical aspects of Tibetan Buddhism become part of your own universe. And he says the vast majority of the pain we suffer at death is caused by our emotional attachment to life, possessions, friends, family, property, and unfinished business. Unfinished business. Whoever you've got unfinished business, do it. And if you can't do it with the actual person, do it with yourself. Finish and complete. I look at my house that I want to pack up. There's so many things in it, so many teachings, so many prayers, so many pictures, so many books, so many everything. I can actually vomit, okay, because yesterday, I packed up CDs. If you saw the CDs that I've got of every single piece of classical music, opera, somebody would have died for that collection, because when I used to study, I used to put the CDs on and have it blaring in the playroom in my old house. I loved to do it while the music was blaring. And then I've got all the spiritual music, tons and tons and tons. Don't even have a player to play it on. So I said to my maid, pack it all in a box. She said, what you going to do with it? I said, I don't know yet. I'm looking for a place where someone can have it. I can't throw it into recycling. I'm to take it to a shop somewhere where somebody can use it. But my God, we collect all these things, and then they come, and then we love them. I loved my music. I don't even have time to listen to it anymore. You know, what a pity. But I mean, we just realize that everything changes in our life. And he says spiritual practitioners recognize death as their big chance to step up, enhance their Dharma practice, and wind down all the meaningless activities that fill their worldly lives. And then Anam Thupten, with his thing, it's called a sacred compass. And he takes you through the 6 bardos, which are quite very interesting, because he's very down to earth. Nikki, you know him well, you know, and he's got a lovely way. He says, the bardo teachings are like a sacred compass. They remind us. And I was thinking of contemplating that word, remind. I mean, I've used it my whole life. Remind me I've got an appointment. Remind me what you want. But you look at that word, remind. Bring it back to the attention of the mind. He said they remind us not to get attached to anything in this world, to where we are, to our life or the affairs of our life. They encourage us to be in the world, but not of it. He says, so where do we belong? And that's where he says, we could say we belong to primordial purity. Now, what happens if we belong to primordial purity? What do we owe to primordial purity? We are the child, and primordial purity is the mother, and primordial purity is in us, and we don't even see it or recognize it. And when we die, the child goes back to primordial purity, and we don't even recognize it, we know it. So what are we doing? You know, the Bardo teachings, he says, are not esoteric knowledge. They are practical teachings that help us to live, to die, and even continue consciously with awareness and courage, which is very important. And just 2 more points, and then I'm going on to the actual teaching. But I think these are so important, and I'm sure there are lots of things people might want to bring up. But when I was listening to Dzongsa Khyentse and in his teaching on Vajrayana, our deity practices, he says, if you understand the sacredness of Vajrayana practice, it's actually the story and meaning and purpose of birth, life with all its activities, and death. If we understood and practiced it, it would teach us the full meaning of the mysteries of life and the mandalas of the Pure Lands. Everything when we do that practice. A lot of people say, I don't understand what I'm doing. I don't want to become a deity and everything. But if you look at it, it was what I said last time. You've got the essence. You've got the nature of the essence, which is part of the essence, but which is the pure expression of the essence, or the impure, deluded expression. And that goes into the manifestation, how we put it, how we put that unlimited compassion into practice. Now, when we go into the death, what I was telling you last time is you go back into the essence, the primordial purity, the mother light and the child light. Then you move into the next level, which is the Bardo of Dhammata, where you see the pure expression of your own mind, the pure expression. Most people don't get it. And then you go to the Bardo of becoming. And in the Bardo of becoming, funny, I saw it in another book called The Karmic Bardo of Becoming. I've never seen it like that before, Eckhart. I don't know if you have. The Karmic Bardo of Becoming. So in that Bardo, that's when the whole deluded mind comes in. If you've got your strength and if you've got your practice, then you can go forward. So he says, Vajrayana practice tells you, because it starts with the essence, then the essence expresses the nature of this beautiful deity. Then you use the mantra, which is not just a mantra, it's the prana, the energy, to move into the whole pure land of that deity, and then you dissolve it back into essence. And that's what our life is about. We were of the essence, we separated ourselves out, not in a pure way. We've now got to go back in a pure way, our essence, and be able to be that near Manakaya, which expresses itself in an unlimited compassion. So when you understand Vajrayana, it's absolutely amazing, because then you've got everything you need. And Dzongsa says, mind at the moment of death is the clearest it has ever been, and becomes clearer still once the body is dead. We see with naked awareness, not with physical eyes, not with physical ears, none of that. We see with naked awareness. Now, if you are not used to naked awareness, it is very overwhelming, to say the least, and sometimes very frightening. So therefore, I want you to get used to the colors, the sounds, the mantras, the pure lands, everything which we do in Vajrayana practice. You get used to it, so that when you get to this point of death, You haven't even got a minute's contemplation. Sometimes if you have a plane crash or you have a heart attack or you don't have time, at least when you're lying with cancer, one of us can maybe come and start talking to you if you really want to. But often we just have a quick death. And when that death happens, you've really, really got to be ready. And I just remember once when I was on a spiritual trip in America, and this girl, and they actually said, I'm sorry, you've got a terrible, I was flying, we've got a terrible, and that was long ago, before I even had this teaching. But they said, we've got a terrible problem, and we don't know if this plane's going to be able to land, and we want you all to get in the brace position. We're going to do an emergency landing. So this girl next to me went hysterical. She was a young girl, and she said, oh my God, are we going to die? I'm not ready to die. And I remember clearly, many years ago this was, I took her hand and I said, shh, just breathe, okay? Because what you need to do now, I always knew these death teaching inside me. What you need to do now is just contemplate what is going to happen, so that if it does happen, you can make your prayers with pleasure. But if it happens, be ready. Don't be in a turmoil, because that last thought you have at death is what you're going to experience when you get out, when you part this thing. So it was very important. Anyway, we didn't die as fate would have it, or as the universe would have it. And then afterwards I said to her, you need to get a grip on your life. You really, really do, because you can't react like that, because that's not a good way to react. Then you are going to be absolutely in a turmoil. It's really important. So that's what I really want to say about everything. I want to just see if anybody wants to say anything, and then let's go into more of the teaching. Anyone? I've said a lot of things. I've given you all the stories. I've given everything. So maybe somebody just wants to, even how you feel about what I'm saying. I want to hear. It doesn't have to be a profound question, but I really want to hear how you feel about what I'm saying. Because if you can get this, then you can get the teachings very, very easy. It doesn't matter about the technicality of the teachings, okay? But for me, I bring those teachings every single day into my prayers, into my life. So they're the back of my hand. The 5 wisdoms, all of those things must be on the back of your hand, because that's who you are, not Melanie. Melanie is just a temporary, transient drama that I'm going through right now. Anyone want to comment or say or ask, or even how you feel? I'll be happy. Man, Nick, anyone? Mimi? I'm happy if you're all happy, but I'm sure there are lots of things going through in your minds after all of that and those stories and everything I've given you. Do you want to ask something, Evie?
Not fine.
She's fine. No. Heaven forbid she should have to ask or comment in a group. Yeah. Anyone? Go on, Gail, please. Please.
You know, what you said was interesting earlier on about, sorry, there's so much that I've taken in. I'm just trying to phrase it better. In a nutshell, I'm not scared of dying, but at this point in time, I'm scared of living. What does that mean?
Yeah, what does it mean? I think you've made a very profound point. What does it mean, Gail? I'm scared of living. Wouldn't another way, I'm coming to you, Eckhart now, wouldn't another way be, I just want to do it correctly. I want to do it the way I need to. I don't want to be sucked into all this illusionary stuff. I want to do it all correctly. Sorry, Eckhart, you wanted to say something? Please.
The beautiful point of dying is it teaches you how to live.
Absolutely.
And if you think about dying and you contemplate your life, you find the answers. And that should be quite a support in your thinking.
Completely. I agree with you. And that's what these authors are trying to say. These masters are trying to say to us. Live your life differently and be absolutely ready. That's the important thing. Because when I read, his name is Tselek Rangtrul. I can't remember his exact, I'll think of his name just now. But he wrote the third bardo in After Death. I just want to see where it is. I'll give you his name now. Because it's very interesting when he called it the karmic bardo of death. The karmic bardo of becoming. Because I thought to myself, karma is relative. It's the way we're living, Gail. With karmic, we're living on a relative level with causes and conditions there. So when you get to the third bardo, if you haven't seen who you are, where you belong, what you are, who you are, then you land up in the karmic bardo of becoming. And I love that term because there, your alaya consciousness of your mind manifests in front of you. Now, people get really, really scared because that's what most things in most religious books are called the afterlife. They say you have this picture of everything you've done, but they always tell you, someone's giving it to you. No one's giving it to you. Your mind is reflecting it, and you don't want to be stuck with stuff. That's why I cry to everybody. Finish your repetitive karmic imprints. Look at them face to face. Finish them. See what they are about. And stop running into another dimension. See what your imprints are about and resolve them. And that's what you're talking about. And a lot of people tell me they're not scared of dying. But the funny part is, if you read all the texts, they all say that at the time of death, people get confused. Most people, unless you're a really strong practitioner, you get confused because it's overwhelming to see who you really are. It's really an overwhelming thing. But if you're working on it while you are living all the time and seeing who you really are, then it's not such a shock, So I love your question. I really do. And Eve, did you want to ask something or say something?
I was just going to ask about the Pure Lands.
Yes.
So I've read, I've seen there's the Pure Lands, this deity is are those Pure Lands there for us to put a picture in our minds so that when we pass over, we have a picture and that's where we go. Is that
exactly
more complicated?
You have such an understanding. Sometimes Edith sends me a little text asking me something, and I'm absolutely astounded because she's just come into Buddhism, but obviously you've done it for a few lifetimes, okay? And the thing is, she asks me these questions. What you're saying is 100% true. Now, when you go to the Pure Land stuff in Japan and all these kind of things, they see it as an external place, okay? But it isn't an external place. It's the state of your mind, because if you look at the word realm, I was explaining this in the suffering teaching, the word realm is where like-minded people gather together in a realm because they've got, like in a hell realm, they've all got angry imprints, so they gather in a realm. So if you go traveling in your sleep state, you can actually see these realms, and all they are is a collective minds of people in one realm. Now, if you look at Guru Rinpoche's or Amitabha's Pure Land, it's all the beings that are together in a pure way, manifesting the most beautiful things, okay? And so if your mind is there, and with Amitabha, it's even a little bit different, because if you know the song and you really aspire to go and you haven't murdered anyone or anything like that, you could get there in your own mind. But most of them, you have to have worked a little bit to get there. But the point is that, yes, the Pure Land is in your mind, as is the hell realm, as is the hungry ghost realm, as is the jealous gods, as is the God realm. We'll talk about them in a minute, but they're all in your mind. So that's why Gail's question is so vital, because if you are in, let's say, a fear realm, because they say there's 6 realms in samsara, but Dzongsa says, if you really want to know the truth, there are hundreds of realms. I mean, if you're going through cancer, a particular cancer, and you're at the hospital where all people are going through that cancer, you're in a realm. You know what I mean? I mean, you're together with those people. All you're talking about is your illness and what you're going to do and how it's going to map out and everything. It's a realm, common realm, but there's no outside place. It's your mind that is there. So it's really important, your question, really important, because a Pure Land, when you're in what they call the karmic Bada of becoming, or the Bada of becoming, you can still get to a pure realm if you've really got the motivation and if you're really not scared by what you see. But a lot of people are, and they just rush into embodiment again. So it's very important that you all understand this. Anyone else? Then let's go on. I want to go on a little bit more of what Dzongsa says, explaining each bardo to us. But he says, while you are alive, you experience the world through your 5 senses. You hear a piece of music with your ears, your physical consciousness, and you see a beautiful view with your eyes. To work properly, our 5 senses rely on the elements that make up the human body. So our senses, eyes, ears, touch, rely on the elements that make up the human body. The shock of sudden death severely disrupts these elements, while a slow, peaceful death simply wears them out. So a quick death shocks you, okay, and disrupts all the elements of your body. A slow death just wears them out. Either way, once the elements have dissolved, which we will do a meditation in a few minutes on, once they have dissolved and you are dead, your 5 senses no longer function. Very important. You are still able to perceive, but all your perceptions are naked and unfiltered, instantly changing how you react, how you interact with your surroundings. In the same way that we must adapt to the loss of sight or hearing while we are alive, being dead requires us to make a few adjustments. Now, if you're prepared, it will not be a shock when you see the naked, unfiltered thing. Because remember how you see something. You're walking with someone, and let's say there's a beautiful tree, and the person says, "Look at this beautiful tree." And the other one says, "Oh my God, I don't want to see that tree." You know what happened to me under that tree a few years ago? I got struck by lightning, okay, under a tree like that. So it's got a negative perception for them. We filter our perceptions according to our karma. So when we have unfiltered, we see the truth, whether we like it or not. And he's trying to explain that. He says, after you die, you will find yourself in a completely alien environment. At this point, if you didn't work with or train your mind while you were alive, you will most likely experience great fear mingled with little hope. Now, he's being truthful. He takes all these Bardo teachings and he puts it into language that we can understand, which we're really lucky to actually have because it's amazing. Okay, but he tries to say the truth in very simple language. And it's really easy to overcome that because he says, if you did train your mind, anything from a simple mindfulness practice to the sophisticated mind training techniques described in the tantric text, the perceptions and projections you experience as you die will be very different from the perceptions of those who didn't train their minds at all. The way you monitor your mind will also be very different. He says, a good Buddhist practitioner, and that's why I say to you, I know a lot of you don't come to the prayers, but I am very happy if you come to the prayers that we do before the lecture. I'm very happy to explain anything that you want. I just do it on audio text. But it's really important because these are how you prepare. He says a good Buddhist practitioner will probably be able to control every moment of the process of dying and death. Now, Bern, who've come into your own space for the first time in about, I don't know, 50 years or whatever the case is, okay, 60 years, you've come into your own space. What absolutely delights me is your ability now, which has also healed what you were sick with, to actually see the beauty in these teachings, to perceive with an unfiltered mind these beautiful teachings. Now, that is going to stand you compared to all the things that go wrong in your life. Those are not very important, and they will go wrong in your life one time or another. They're not very important, but your joy in what you can do is absolutely amazing to me to watch you. And even a mediocre practitioner will be able to apply a certain amount of mindfulness, which in itself can bring considerable relief. But whether you have trained your mind or not, and all of you have done some training, the most important piece of information to remember is that in the Bardos, everything you experience is a projection created by your own mind, or a manifestation, if you want to say, created by your own mind. As soon as you know this, you realize this, you're not afraid about what you're seeing. It takes away the fear, because if you know this, what you see, look, it's mind-boggling. I told you the first time I saw color undiluted through an unfiltered thing, I didn't know what to do with my body. I didn't know what to do. I was jumping around in the room going, oh my God, I didn't know color could be like this. Now, when you get into the Bardos, that's how color is, because color is the manifestation, the nature of the essence. So you are going to see it. But imagine you raw and you don't know anything about this. And you hear the sound, what is called the sound of Dharmata. It's like 1,000 thunderclap loud noise. But when you hear it, if you train, you say, this is quite the most perfect sound in the world. Taisitu, when I was with him, I told you, he said to me, I said to him, Rinpoche, how do you hear the sound of Dharmata? He goes, oh, he used to call me South Africa. You know, he didn't remember all our names. He used to call me South Africa, South Africa. I don't know how to explain it to you. All I know is that when I'm on an aeroplane, I can hear the sound of Dharmata. He said, so I put my head back in the chair. He said, and it's this loud, perfect noise Okay, now if you've never heard it, I hear it sometimes. I don't hear it as loud as that, but I hear that inner sound. And if you hear the inner sound, you're preparing yourself for death. And if you see that things are not bland and illusory like they are, but you see through them and you train your mind, you're not scared. You're not scared when you come in the bardo. So he says the most important information to remember is that in the bardos, everything you experience is a projection created by your own mind. Each person's perception of the bardos will therefore be unique. Now, this is so interesting because you get what you're supposed to see when you go in the bardos, but yours may be unique. You may experience it differently, and that's okay. But once you know that it is your mind, it's not some being coming and frightening you. It's your mind that you are seeing free and unfiltered. You're not scared. Why would you be scared of your own mind? You're scared of something outside. There's a boogeyman. There's a monster. I'm scared. But if you know that's your mind, you got to go, listen, I think you should create something else here. This illusionary boogeyman is not for me. You can you can let it go. But in the beginning, when you die, you see the pure expression. When you go further on in the bardos, you see some of the impure expression, but if you know, you can still create the purity for yourself. I feel these things so strongly, very, very strongly. That's why even now I want to give you the meditation on the dissolving of the elements. I think this teaching on death and dying, I never expected myself to give it like this, but this is the way it's coming out for me, and I can't stop it. This is what I know I have to give to you guys, and you have to contemplate it. And if you want anything from me, you just text me. I do it with an audio back. You just say, Melanie, I was thinking about this, and I don't quite understand it, or would this be the way I'm seeing it? With pleasure, and I will text you back. Every one of you that are here really learning, I'm very happy to do that for you, if I can. I'm no great expert, but, understand these things, a little bit well. So he says, I want to just finish this. Karma is so powerful that it influences every moment of life and death. If you have good karma, no matter how often you move house, you'll always end up somewhere lovely. Whenever you advertise, he says, for new domestic help, you will always find someone kind and honest. Whatever you eat will always taste delicious if you've accumulated good karma. If you have bad karma, no matter whom you date, you will always end up fighting. And the food other people love will always make you sick. And how you die will always depend on your karma. If your karma is good, you will not resist the process of dying and will face death calmly and sensibly. He says, so what is good karma and what is bad karma? It depends on your outlook. Some people say, when I die, I want all my family around me, and I want them to be there loving me, and I want to see they all love me, and then I'll feel okay. If you ask me, none of them must be there, not one of them. Whatever the story is, I'm going to say to all of them, cheers, everybody. I love you. I love you. Now I need to concentrate. I love you. I've loved our life together, our fights, our love, your birth, your this, your that. I've loved to be there for lots of things. I haven't enjoyed all things. I'm so sorry. Can you scram now? Okay, because that's the end of you. I won't tell them that's the end of you, but that's what you're feeling inside. Because they can't be there. So he says, your good and bad karma is up to you. But he says, karma will influence you all the way through the process of dying, right up to the final dissolution. Your last thought in the moment before you die will be the thread that takes you into the bardos, permeating your bardo experience with its own flavor and continuity. So that last thought is crucially important. If somebody is fighting with you or there's unfinished business with somebody, like I was dealing with a woman who they had really quite a lot of trauma, her and her husband, and then she went and lived there and he went and lived there, and then he got cancer and she came back and she came back to nurse him through the cancer. And my first question was, did you talk to each other? Did you say sorry? Did you finish? She said, no, we don't talk about those things. He did say to her, I'm glad it's you that's here looking after me. I think that was his way of saying, I'm glad you're here. Okay, and I think it was the most he could say. But why not say when you're dying, I'm so sorry. The times I've hurt you, I'm so sorry. I really am. I know that I did this and this. I didn't really want to. But finish your unfinished business, because the last thought when you die is the most important one that you take into the bardos. So if you go into the bardos, I don't want to die, please, I don't want to die, God help me, don't let me die. You're taking such a bad thought of resistance into the bardo. It's much better to finish if you've got a longer death and say, I am going to be peaceful and grateful for all the opportunities, open portal to unity with my true nature that I have had, and go with that thought. Then that catapults you into, but don't go with a negative thought, because that will go right through. He says, so your last thought is crucially important, just as the quality of the seed sown affects the quality of a gardener's plants. Good and bad past actions will also determine where you are reborn, and we'll talk about that, and we'll talk deeply about the realms. He says body and mind are entwined inseparably throughout your life. At the moment of death, they split apart, and for the very first time, your mind experiences what it is like to be separate from your body. The body is then burnt, buried, or allowed to disintegrate naturally while the mind continues. Once you are dead, your experience of your mind will be unlike anything you've known before. Now, he talks about, imagine if you had sunglasses on for your whole life. He says you had sunglasses. That's how you saw everything in the world, a little bit darker. Yes, I forgot my glasses. I had to use my sunglasses when we were out, and my sunglasses made everything a little bit darker. Now imagine you've got the sunglasses and now you die, okay, and then you take them off and the whole world becomes bright. He gives that as an example, and I love it because I think it really, really does help you to really know what the story is. He says, the specifics of what happened depend on how much experience you had of looking at your mind while you were alive. If you didn't work with it during your life, the moment of death could be terrifying. He says will be terrifying. I'm going could be terrifying. Okay, so terrifying that your fear will probably cause you to faint. None of you are ever going to faint. Whether I'm there or here, just shout to me, phone Eckhart, do what you like, but none of you are going to faint. You're going to keep your eyes wide open. And if I'm already there in another dimension, you just scream for me and I'm coming to get you. Whether or not you lose consciousness at death will depend on how good you are at being conscious while you are alive. In other words, on how mindful you are right now. The separation of body from mind is a terrible shock, like being hit on the head with a baseball bat. That's why most people faint. He says, but although You no longer experience gross consciousness. You will never lose the consciousness, the self-awareness that is the nature of mind. The nature of mind can never be lost. He said, eventually you will wake up from your faint. And even though you are dead, you will be able to see, hear, feel, smell, and touch, but not with your body's sense organs. In death, you perceive everything directly with your mind. With your mind's eye, you hear with your mind's ear, you feel with your mind's body, and so on. Precisely what you perceive once you're dead, hard to predict. Okay, so what we're going to do now, we're going to talk about, I don't think we're going to have time, we're going to talk about the 6 realms that there are in samsara, but remember I said there are lots of other realms. But what we're going to do now is we're just going to go to the point when you die. So I want all of you to make yourselves very comfortable. I'm going to give you this meditation as Zongsa interprets it. And I want you to actually, for 1 minute, pretend you are dying. And these teachings are actually given to you, okay? And then we'll go back and do the other things afterwards, but these are given to you. And I want you to pretend that you're sitting there. You've said to your family goodbye, okay? You've said to your family goodbye. You're sitting in your bed. If you possibly can, your back is straight upright. It's really important because you want to have that energy in the central channel, okay? And if the person is not at all Buddhist or agnostic, he says you can say, you are now dying. Death comes to everyone. We all die. And today it is you that is dying. And he goes on, don't worry about your life. Don't worry about your friends and family. Don't worry about your work. Instead, seize the opportunity to be peaceful and present. So I'm not going to give you the non-Buddhist approach. I'm going to give you the Buddhist approach. So I want you to breathe in and breathe out and pretend these are your last breaths. Okay? So usually the in-breath is longer. I think the in-breath is longer and the out-breath takes a long time. Right at the end, you have a lot of, no breathing. So people think you've died, but you haven't. And then you go, you take a breath in again. So I want you to picture yourself sitting there, and let's say a beautiful Buddhist practitioner or a lama is really right by your bed. Imagine Zongsa Khyentse was right by your bed, because it's his words I'm going to use. And remember, you always make sure you say the dying person's name out aloud before you start reciting the instruction, because identity is very important to us human beings. So I go, O son or daughter of noble family, Eckhard Drusker, Bernice Kaplan, Iga Fagula, they'll probably do your whole name, Edith Magnuson, Lucian Aronson, and on and on and on. O child of noble family. Why do they say that? And your name will be given. Because you are of the noble family of primordial purity. Remember that. You are a noble son or daughter. You are dying. The projection called this life is about to end. And the projection called the next life is about to begin. You will soon discard the shell of your old body and acquire a new one. Om Mani Padme Hum. So you will soon acquire a new one. Om Mani Padme Hum. I'm just going to mute you all so you don't have the sounds. O son or daughter of noble family, and your name. The thought you are currently thinking will pass. It may already be fading. Soon you will think a new thought. Om Mani Padme Hum. Your air element, your vital energy is now dissolving. You're not going to breathe for very much longer. Your digestion is deteriorating. Your mind is becoming vague and confused. You are losing control of your bowels, and saliva is dripping from your lips. You have difficulty swallowing. Your limbs feel weak and don't function. Om Mani Padme Hum. The dissolution of the air element causes the earth element to fall apart. Your head is too heavy for your neck to support. That's why we've got your neck leaning back. Every movement is a struggle. You are too weak to hold a spoon. You feel dull, as if you are being suffocated. You push and kick at something that seems to be smothering you. And you may see a flickering, mirage-like light. Om Mani Padme Hum. The degeneration of the earth element leads to the water element dissolving into the fire element. You feel dry. Your tongue rolls up. Om Mani Padme Hum. The following lines are a gentle way of telling the person they are dying. Is your body feeling heavy? The earth element in your body is dissolving into the water element. Om Mani Padme Hum. Are you feeling dry and dehydrated? The water element is dissolving into the fire element. Om Mani Padme Hum. Are you shivering? Do you feel cold? The fire element is dissolving into the air element. Om Mani Padme Hum. Your breathing will soon become labored as the weight of a mountain lands on your chest. It will be harder to breathe in, but you will still be able to breathe out. Do not panic. There is nothing pressing down on you. The heavy weight is the disintegration of your body elements. Do not be afraid. Om Mani Padme Hum. Next, it is as if you are wrapped in darkness. Everything is pitch black. Do not panic. Your outer sense consciousness, your eyes, your ears, your nose, and so on, are dissolving. Om Mani Padme Hum. It feels like you are falling from a great height. Do not panic. You are not falling through space. Your body and your mind are gradually separating. Now, for the first time ever, your mind will experience independence. This is what your mind feels like when it is not confined by your body. Om Mani Padme Hum. O son or daughter of noble family, and your name again, do not dwell on what you have failed to achieve in this lifetime or what you wish you had done. There is no end to worldly endeavor. Om Mani Padme Hum. Do not worry about relatives and friends. They will be fine, each in their own way. I just told that to somebody. And anyway, there is nothing you could do for them. Do not think about the possessions. Do not think about how much you will miss your life, your houses, your phones, your car chargers, your USB sticks, and so on. Om Mani Padme Hum. Soon you will experience rainbow-colored lights. These lights will appear suddenly. So remember, they are nothing more than the hue the display, the expression of your mind. Om Mani Padme Hum. Now the next part you say, if people have learned, and all of you have learned, if the dying person has been introduced to the three kayas, the three bodies, Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya, rather than saying the expression of your mind, you say the expression of the three kayas. If they haven't been introduced, don't confuse them by using terms they will not understand. Instead, say your mind. The infinite rainbow-like colors and shapes that now surround you are unlike anything you have ever seen before. The blueness of the blue, the greenness of the green, the redness of the red are unimaginably intense and alive, because you are no longer limited by the filter of your eyes. You are able to perceive all the unnamed colors that were invisible to you while you were alive. Om Mani Padme Hum. You can see some familiar shapes like squares, triangles, and semicircles, but most are completely unknown to you. You never imagined that such shapes exist. Om Mani Padme Hum. Everything feels intense and raw because you no longer perceive using the filters of your body's sense organs or your imagination. There is nothing between you and the object you are experiencing. Om Mani Padme Hum. Do not be afraid of the colors and shapes or how intensely you perceive them. They are nothing more than the expression of your mind, the three kayas. Nothing you see and experience is out there. It is all the radiant display of mind. Om Mani Padme Hum. Do not be afraid. There is no need to panic. He says you will now faint, but I'm saying you will not faint because all of you will be ready for this. O son or daughter of noble family in the name, this is the Buddha. O son or daughter of noble family in the name, this is the Buddha. O son or daughter of noble family in the name, this is the Buddha. Om Mani Padme Hum. Do not be afraid. Do not contrive. This is the Buddha. This is the real you. You are not the name he gives of the dying person. You are Buddha. Face it. Dwell in your true nature. You are Buddha. Do not shy away from your Buddha nature. This is it. Do not try to run away from the state. Relax and dwell right here. Om Mani Padme Hum. For those of us who are still called living, so-called living beings, this state is labeled the moment of death. In the human realm, the dying person is now considered to be dead. It says to repeat this, but I just wanted to give you his things, and I'm coming back to give you much more detail. But wouldn't it be wonderful if you had someone talking to you like that? You could put on this YouTube if you want when you're dying. Okay. But what do you think of how he says it? You see, he doesn't give all the details, and I'm going to go back and give you the details. I'm going to go back because it's really important, because I want to do the outer dissolution and the inner dissolution. The inner dissolution is so important because when the inner elements dissolve, you lose all the passion, aggression, and delusion for a while. So you've got the best opportunity to actually see who you really are. And for those of you that are able to do this, I'm going to give you this next week. It's such an amazing thing. And then you can do the power, which is the transference of the consciousness out, which I'll give you all the different ways of doing the power, but we can do it, not talk about it, which is so important, because the transfer of the consciousness, you should be practicing all the time. Did you like those instructions? Very, very good, isn't it? Because he's taken the real technical language of death and dying and put it into our language. He has a wonderful gift think about this master. He was one of the top masters. Kienzi Wanpo, and I don't know how many of you were here when I did the life story of Choki Lodro, when I did it in this group. Do you remember? I did his whole life story. That was his last incarnation. He was the most amazing, amazing being. And now he's come. He's naughty. He makes movies. He challenges people. He goes all over. Wherever he teaches, wherever he is, there are about 1,000 people on the Zoom and 1,000 people attending, or a few hundred people attending, because he's made himself indispensable to us. And I love the way he does it. I'm going to go back and go through some of the technical details, but I think it's wonderful to have it like that. What do you think, Gail? It's a nice way. It's a nice way of doing it, I think.
It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful and understandable and
Yeah.
relatable.
Exactly. And that's what he's tried to do. He said, I've got to take these teachings and make them relatable, which is amazing, because if you can relate to them, but I will go back next time and just give you the details of the dissolutions. But the dissolutions are also extremely important because, my great connection is with Jigme Lingpa. Jigme Lingpa was the next incarnation of Longchenpa. And Jigme Lingpa came with me on a few retreats. I mean, all my dreams and everything were filled with Jigme Lingpa, and he is what an unbelievable master. Okay, and I love it. I love his teaching. I love everything about Jigme Lingpa. And it's interesting because he does a Bardo teaching, and in it, he doesn't say, earth, when all the things, earth dissolves into water, water dissolves into fire. Sorry, earth dissolves into fire, fire dissolves into water, whichever way it is. He doesn't. He says, earth dissolves into earth. Fire dissolves into fire. Sorry, water dissolves into water. Fire dissolves into fire. Now that's very interesting because I've never read it like that. And it made me contemplate a lot. And I thought, you know what? Everything that we are is dissolving into everything that we are. Everything's dissolving. So that's a very interesting thing because we're human and because we like to have it all in order, we say earth dissolves into water. But actually, earth dissolves, air dissolves, fire dissolves. That's what our body is made up of. So when these things happen and we see some of the illusionary things as they're happening, people really get scared. Because I know sometimes when I'm dreaming and, in the dream state, all the elements dissolve as well, but very quickly. And if you're aware, you can actually see them dissolving. But very often, when I'm coming back from my dream state, I do that falling, and I jolt out of the sleep state. Now, when he says you feel as though you're falling in space. Now, that's a really scary thing for people if you don't know anything, okay? Because you think, oh God, I'm finished, I'm dissolving into space. But actually, that's the most wonderful thing. That's where you've got to let go, because it's not really that you're falling. It's that it feels like it because the body and mind are separating. So it's such an amazing thing. It feels as though you are falling, and that can be really scared because you go, help, I'm falling. But when you just free fall because it's only the elements dissolving. So listen, everybody, I'm giving you this in quite a different way to which I usually do. I've no reason, I don't know why I'm doing it like that. I think it's Zongska's influence on me. But I want you to feel when we finish this, we're going to end. When you finish this, I want you to feel that these teachings are right in your finger, that they're not some fancy teachings with millions of technical terms and you don't understand them. You've got to say, I know exactly how I'm going to die. And if not, then I've failed in my purpose. So the thing is that I really, really want you to, and you can ask me anything, absolutely anything, okay? Because it's really important that you understand all of this and that you are so at ease. And, you know, I can only really do it with this group because you're close and I can do it like this. But I really think it's very important. I really, really do. So let's dedicate, and I will definitely stay for a few minutes afterwards. Can't stay very long, but I'll stay for a few minutes. And if you've got questions or comments or anything, you're really welcome to give them to me. But let's dedicate, first of all, to all those beings who have died in terrible, terrible, not that bird, in terrible, terrible ways, okay? By terrorists, by terrorists, by whatever way they've died, and they really feel terrible and they don't know where they are and they don't know what's happening to them and they're afraid. For all those people, we really dedicate any merit from these teachings. We dedicate to all those who've died and who are lost, and for all those who've been left behind, to know that they are there, that they have the capacity to do this, even though it feels like they can't manage with that person, but they do. And through this merit, may we all achieve all-seeing Buddhahood, and thereafter, once all harmful enemies have been defeated, may all beings be liberated from the ocean of existence, stirred by the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death. Sonam die tamche zipane topne nepe tranam pamshene chegana jibala tropaye sipe sole doa tro warshu. Stop there.